Hey everybody! I haven't done one of these in a little while. This is what I call office hours. It's basically a live Q&A, and I'll maybe noodle a little bit on the guitar in between while people's questions come in. It's called office hours because I think that sounds good. I'm just going to do a half an hour today. I'm teaching today, and I have a little break here between 12:30 and 1 o'clock East Coast time. So I thought I would just say hi since I haven't done this in a while. Uh, um, I'm trying something different with this live stream. The comments are a little bit delayed. Uh, oh, wow. Roberto is here from Sicily. Thanks for being here. Do I mind going over ear training exercises? Sure, Ryan. Um, Tell me a little bit about you. What sort of level are you at? How long have you been playing? Uh, what kind of stuff is easy for you to hear now, and what kind of stuff would you like to be able to hear? So just give me a little bit more info, and then I'm glad to talk about it. Oh man, now the questions are really coming in. I'm hoping to hear back from Ryan Ray, so I can get into ear training. Uh, but since Roberto asked a pretty specific question, I'll see if I can answer. Roberto Campos says, "Can you talk about the gear you like?" I'm thinking about buying a deluxe reverb, but there's no one to try here. Thoughts? As far as modern deluxe reverbs, I've tried three different flavors of deluxe reverbs that are currently in production. One is the Tone Master, which is a little bit high tech. It's got recording outputs. It's got an attenuator. That's pretty cool, actually. I was thinking I wouldn't like it. I don't like a lot of technology in my gear, generally speaking. But I used that. It was at a venue that I was playing in New York City, and that was the amp that they had. And I was pleasantly surprised. I think that's pretty cool. If you're not tied to, needing to have hot, glowing vacuum tubes in the back of your amp, I feel still pretty much stuck there. I know it's 2023. There's a lot of new ways to make your guitar sound good, and it doesn't always have to include technology from the 1940s, right? So, but anyway, the Tone Master Deluxe Reverb I thought was pretty cool. I have used many 65 Deluxe reissue amps on the road. They're kind of everywhere. Lots of venues have those. I don't generally love them. Uh, they feel a little too overbuilt to me in a way. Like the speaker is too heavy and there's too much clean headroom. And the new 65 Deluxe reissue, the I've played easily 25 of them all over the place in different venues and indoors, outdoors, whatever. They don't remind me of deluxe reverb amps of a real 65 deluxe reverb. They're so different that maybe if I just tried to think of it as an amp and didn't try to think of it as a real 65 deluxe reverb, I might like it more. But I don't like them because they just don't do what I expect from a vintage deluxe reverb. Those a good vintage deluxe reverb, if you can find one and can afford one, those are really useful amps. I'll stop there because you already know about them. Of the newest Fender deluxe reverb things, the ones that I've liked the most actually are the 68 custom deluxe reverb. I think that's a really useful amp in a lot of situations. Sounds good, feels good. I don't compare it to anything in particular. It kind of is its own thing, even though it's sold as a deluxe reverb inspired by the 1968 sort of post black panel. They went to silver panel, and it's sort of inspired by that. I think that's a cool amp and a useful amp. And that's what I request when I'm traveling now. If the venue is going to provide an amp, that would be my first choice, actually. The amps that I actually own at home, I have two. They're both amps with 12-inch speakers. One is a Swart Atomic Space Tone Pro, also known as the Swart AST Pro. It's about the same power as a deluxe reverb, and it has reverb and tremolo. It's voiced a little differently than a deluxe reverb, at least in my experience of deluxe reverbs. It's a little uh, darker and richer in the low mids. Uh, I think of it as more like a Gibson amp sound. That's not based on I should be clear here, I'm not an expert in gear. I'm just telling you stuff that I like and have used. But it reminds me the Swart reminds me more of like a Gibson Falcon than a deluxe reverb, but, similar tube complement, similar power, and so on. I also have a Benson amps, Nathan Jr., which originally came in a 10-inch speaker combo configuration. I asked Chris Benson, who is Benson Amps, to build me a new to take the amp, the electronics out and put into a new cabinet with a 12-inch speaker. So I have a 12-inch Nathan Jr. combo, which is very, very different from the Fender sound and from the Swart sound. It's a little tougher, more in the kind of British uh, flavor to my ears and experience. It's a single end, amp. Anyway, that's what I have and that's what I use. But when I'm on the road, I get all kinds of amps. Okay, that was a long answer to Roberto's question. I'm going to go back to Ryan Ray's question about ear training, and then I'll answer Omega about shifting smoothly up and down the neck. So, Ryan Ray says, I've been playing for a minute now, but new to jazz, and I was hoping for chords recognition or progressions. I was a classical guitarist for my main focus, so I can read well, but I'm relying more on sheet music than my ear. Yeah. Um, mm, yeah. Well, you have to close the book if you want to develop your ear and listen to records and transcribe stuff. And I'm trying to think of a specific place that I could tell you to start. Um, I might start with a record with a singer on it, like, for example, some Billie Holiday records might be a great place to start to develop your ear for chord progressions. It's kind of early days of jazz, so she's gonna do songs like, Body and Soul or God Bless the Child or, tunes from the 30s and 40s, I guess. And because she's a singer, you know, the way that she states the melody is very personal. A lot of times what she's singing is different from the composed melody, but the harmony behind her is what you're asking about. And you want to, these tunes are played in a cyclical way. So a lot of jazz tunes from that era are 32 measures long, and then they repeat. There might be an intro at the beginning and an outro at the end, but in the middle, while Billie Holiday is singing and while the band is improvising, it's almost always just a cycle of the tune, which are generally 32 bars long, 32 measures long, because that was um, the standard of songs from that era. And so oftentimes there's an A section. A typical form is AABA. So things come back around. The whatever the harmony is in the first A section is going to be pretty similar to what it is in the second. So this is just all background to say, okay, how do we learn to hear this stuff? Um, I wouldn't worry in the beginning about trying to hear all the possible harmony that there is, but you do want to recognize, like, where is the one chord, where is the five chord, and where does it go to the four. Those are the kind of big places that jazz tunes of that era, we need to be able to hear that. So since you've been playing for a while and you play classical music, I'm sure you can hear that stuff. The stuff that's, I think, starts to get challenging is that jazz tunes are very rarely do they stay diatonic. Oftentimes they'll shift to a different key just for a couple of measures. Maybe I'll talk about that in a minute, but a more kind of immediate thing that you want to start to hear is that there are often uh, secondary dominant chords in jazz. So when we want to go to the 4 chord, instead of just going there, sometimes they'll go with the 5 of 4, which you could say, well, that's the 1 dominant. But harmony is always moving forward. So when you hear the one, so I'm in the key of D flat, right? So when we want to go to the 4 chord, you could just go there. But in jazz, it's pretty common that we have the 5 of the 4. So you want to learn to hear that as 5 of 4. And same thing with the 5 chord. We can just go there, but it's pretty common to have the 5 of the 5, which you could say, well, that's just the 2 dominant, and it is the 2 dominant. But where is it going? That's what you want to start to hear. Where is the harmony going? And so instead of describing this as 2 dominant, I might describe it as 5 of 5. And that's going to come up in lots and lots of tunes. So just right now we've got 1, 5, 1, 4, 5, 1. If I want to go to 4, I could get there through its 5. If I want to get to 5, I could go through its 5, which sometimes appears as an inversion. We could do a whole other thing about ear training of inversions. But for now, let's keep roots in the bass. So what else? We might also go to the 6 chord. That's pretty common in jazz. And so in D flat, which we're in, that would be B flat minor. And the 5 of that is F7, B flat minor. So now we've introduced some new sounds that we didn't know before or didn't have before when we were thinking just in pure diatonic terms. So we've got D flat 7 because that's 5 of 4. We've got E flat 7 because that's 5 of 5. We've got F7 because that's 5 of 6. So maybe do that in a few keys. So I'll go to C. So I want to get to the 6 chord. Go there and then try it again going 5 of 6. Now I want to go to the 5 chord of C. So instead of just going there, and as I do this in my mind, I'm thinking 1, 5, 1, even though I'm not saying it out loud all the time, 5 of 6, 6, like, so that when you put on a record, start to hear those things and also say them to yourself while you're practicing. 5 of 6, 6, 5 of 5, 5, 5 of 3. It doesn't come up as much. So do it in a few different keys so you're not stuck with just the one key. So now I'll do it in G. So I want to go G, 1, 6. So like that. Something that you'll hear in jazz a lot is that we don't just have dominant chords, but they're very often coupled as 2 5s. So if we're in G and I want to go to C, instead of just going the 5 of C, we might play 2, 5 to C. And now to get to the 5 chord, instead of just going 5 of 5 to 5, we might go 2, 5, 5, and back to 1. I went to 4 minor there. That's another place that sometimes we go. So those would be the exercises I would do, and I would do them in lots of keys. And say it to yourself as you do them so that you're really planting the idea in your mind that each move has a feeling to it. It can't just be information. It has to have a feeling. That's, I think, how it sticks in our brain. If I say something is sweet or something is salty, you have a sense memory of what those things are, and you have to develop the same kind of thing for these different places that we can go in the harmony. One other thing that I think would be helpful would be to practice this chord progression that's the diatonic cycle of fourths. So what I mean is sometimes when we say the cycle of fourths, it's purely chromatic. So if we start on G, you might go G, C, F, B flat, E flat, A flat, D flat, G flat or F sharp, B, E, A, D, G. Like that's the full 12 key, cycle of fourths. But I'm not talking about doing that for this exercise. We're just going to stay in one key and go around the circle. So let's say we're in G. G, C, F sharp diminished, B minor, E minor, A minor, D, G. I'll do it again. 1, 4, 7, 3, 6, 2, 5, 1. This is a good progression to memorize because you're going to hear little chunks of that string or circle all throughout jazz tunes from the 30s, 40s, 50s. And you want to start to recognize when something is going, 2, 5, 1, 4, 3, 6, 2, 5, 1, or 1, 6, 2, 5. That's all, 6, 6, 2, 5. That's part of that circle. 3, 6, 2, 5, 1, 4. And now I'm playing not just triads, but seventh chords. So A minor 7, D 7, G major 7, C major 7, F sharp minor 7, flat 5, B minor 7, E minor 7, A minor 7, and then do it in other keys. I'll do it now in F. E minor 7, flat 5, that's the 7 chord. A minor 7 is 3, D minor 7 is 6, G minor 7 is 2, and so on. That comes up all the time. You'll hear that in lots of tunes. So you want to recognize that. That would be a place to start. I wish I could catch up with you in 3 months or 6 months and see where you're at, and we could talk about next steps. But if that stuff is challenging enough for you, start with that. And again, start with vocalists and standard tunes, a Chet Baker record, a Billie Holiday record, an Ella Fitzgerald record, something from the 40s, if possible, maybe early 50s, where things are more clear. As things get into the late 50s and 60s, it's more experimental and chords are voiced in different kinds of ways. Start there. Okay, that was another really long answer. Ryan, I hope that was helpful. Um, uh, okay, I want to get to Omega. Roberto Campo, opinion, really brief on Fender Blues Junior. I think Fender Blues Juniors are great. I used one at a gig the other night. That is a really useful amp. It just is. Yeah, that's a great amp. If you can get your hands on a good Blues Junior, uh, that's that's great. Those are great amps. Like any amp, you might play one that's better than another. You might play one that's a dog. Generally speaking, I think that's a really cool amp. Omega, have you felt like you've had to adjust the value of notes you play in different playing situations? For instance, more clipped versus more full value of a quarter note? Yes. Wow, what a great question. I don't think I've ever been asked that uh, on YouTube or anywhere else. But yeah, absolutely. Um, the guitar, almost to a fault, guitar players seem to be obsessed with sustain. We talk about, pickups that, guitars that sustain pickups that sustain pedals and so on. But we want to be responsible not just for the start of our note and sustaining, as much as we can, even though that's really fun. Um, I have a friend named Jerry Watts who's a bass player in Los Angeles, and I used to hear him with his students. He would talk about the word envelope, which the envelope is there's like 4 elements, which I learned when I took a synthesis class 100 years ago: attack, decay, sustain, and release. Uh, I don't want to get too into the weeds here, but the short answer, Omega, to your question is yes. Um, as fun as it is to play long tones and sustain all the time, in some situations, in every situation, you have to pay attention and listen to what you're adding to the music, to the sound. Listen to it, feel it. Uh, I don't have like a cheat sheet of like, if this is happening, do this. If that's happening, do this. I don't think of it quite that way, but just pay attention. And you might have to either, palm mute to get less sustain, or just, sometimes I'll use these fingers over here to stop a note. Sometimes I'll just take my finger off the note. Well, in this case, there's other strings that are going to be sympathetic. So I have to mute the sympathetic strings and just take my finger off. There's lots of ways to stop a note. Um, this hand, with the note, with the finger that you're actually using, or with other fingers. Work on that. Work on the end of your note. It's important. Singers have to do it. Horn players have to do it. We have to do it, but we forget. That's on a very microscopic level. If you zoom out, it's the same thing with your phrases. It's easy on the guitar, or fairly easy, just to play stuff that runs on. But where you stop is just as important as where you start and what happens in the middle. So that's like attack, decay, sustain, release envelope zoomed out to like phrasing, melody phrasing. Um, but yeah, if we're just talking about one note or a chord, a lot of times I'll play shorter, I'll play longer. Just listen, pay attention, see how what you're, I keep saying see, but it's not really seeing. Feel and hear how what you're playing is working within what you're doing. Just like we might turn up or add or subtract treble, or add or subtract bass, or add or subtract reverb. The actual note itself, shape it, shape your notes. Yes, that's a great question. I love it. Um, uh, Nathan Zek, I'm going to get to that question in a second. I want to go back. Omega also asked, what are some good ways to work on shifting closed chords smoothly up and down the neck? I just have used over the years, exercises like, just playing chord scales. So that's in the key of C, C major 7, D minor 7, E minor 7, F major 7, G7. Now I'll shift to the next string set because I've run out here. A minor 7, B minor 7, flat 5, C major 7. So these are just the diatonic chords. And I would do that with a metronome or drum loop or whatever, so that you're doing it in time and be able to do that up and down the scale. Then you could do the same thing using that diatonic cycle that I mentioned earlier. So we could go C major 7, C major 7, F major 7. I'm not feeling it. I got to find these things. C major 7, F major 7, B minor 7, flat 5, E minor 7, A minor 7, D minor 7, G7, C major 7. If you want to try to stay on one string set, that could be cool. C major 7, F major 7, B minor 7, flat 5, A minor 7, or E minor 7, A minor 7, D minor 7, G7, and maybe C major 7 up here. That's a good exercise, staying on one string set and going around the diatonic circle, where you have to jump to grab something. but it's not in a random order. I mean, this is a pretty common chord progression. So this is worth practicing so that uh, when it comes up, you can do it. Uh, yeah, I think that's pretty useful exercise. I hope that's helpful. I'm just going to answer whatever questions are here now, and I'll do my best. Ivan Glasnovich says, just recently learned that you did this solo on Give Me One Reason. Can you speak a little bit about how it was developed, composed, or improvised? Um, I improvised that solo for Give Me One Reason. That's a Tracy Chapman song from 96 ish, I think. It was improvised, but I should say that that was a band that rehearsed a lot. Before we made that record, we had been playing together, 5 days a week for months. We worked on a lot of music before we went in the studio and made that record with the band. That the band that you hear on the record, we were rehearsing some of her older songs. We started to learn some of her newer songs. So I got to play that song with Tracy dozens of times over weeks, maybe months, before we ever got in the studio to record it. So even though I wouldn't say that I composed the solo, I had plenty of time to get comfortable with it. So there probably are things that I would do not the same every time, but just, the kind of shape of it, or, where I started, where the peak of it was, and stuff like that. In a recording studio situation, it's very rare that you have any time to work on anything, because time is money and you have to think quickly and create quickly. So that was a case where I had plenty of time to develop something before they ever hit the record button. I was very lucky that way. So the solo you hear, that happened live. We were tracking with a live band with Tracy singing. Tracy's playing rhythm guitar. There's a drummer, bass player, percussionist. I think they later overdubbed an organ part. The organ player wasn't there with us, but there was a five-piece band tracking live. What you heard is how it went down. And I feel very lucky that I had the chance to work with Tracy and with that group of musicians over a period of time, because that's not always the case in the studio. Um, uh, yeah, modern. Well, Nathan, I'm going to correct you. There's two books, and your name is actually a mix of them. Ted Green had a book called Chord Chemistry, wonderful book, and there's a book called Modern Chord Progressions, which is the one that I've spent way more time with. Yeah, so Modern Chord Progressions is a great book. I fully endorse it. That thing that I was showing you with the using the diatonic circle of fourths, Ted has a whole chapter on that in Modern Chord Progressions, starting on page 49. But instead of shifting around, he does it more with voice leading. So, like, you might do this. That's how it might be in that book, instead of shifting around all the time. Oh gosh, Paul Jenkins, do you have any suggestions for putting together a solo repertoire? I'm in a small town with restaurants and hotels, but no real music venues. I'm eager to play out, but don't have a community of musicians. Paul, shoot, I was going to try to keep this one to a half an hour. uh, okay, I'm going to answer Paul's question because I really appreciate it, and then I'm going to have to. Oh, and Nathan said, "Do you play an electric Collings much?" Yes, I have a Collings I-30 that I play a fair bit. I have a few electrics that I rotate. I have a couple of ES-335s. I have a really nice Telecaster that's on loan from a friend of mine. I have a Jaguar. Of the Collings electrics I've played, the I-30 has been the one that I've had the most fun with. So that's what I have. I have a Collings I-30, which I would show you, but I'm trying to keep this short. Yes, solid guitars, definitely. Um, So, Paul Jenkins, do you have any suggestions for putting together a solo repertoire? Yes. Play um, play songs that you want to play, and play songs that people will enjoy. So if you're playing in restaurants and hotels and not in a music venue, who is in those restaurants and hotels? Uh, a lot of times when we put together solo guitar repertoire, there's this idea that we have to play songs from the jazz, uh, from jazz. And I love jazz songs. Maybe you love jazz songs. Uh, if the people in the restaurants and hotels are, uh, I mean, you have to go there, check them out. Go eat at one of those restaurants. Go have a drink in one of those hotels, in the lobby bar. I suppose that's where you'd be playing, not in the hotel rooms. Uh, Hang out, see who's there. Try to get a feel for what kind of music they would like. Think about what kind of music you like. There are no rules, is what I'm saying. And I want to encourage you to play songs that warm your heart and or warm the hearts of regular folks that you'll find in these places. You don't have to play songs just because that's what Joe Pass did or whatever. That said, you want to play things that are playable. I don't know what level you're at, so that's also going to determine what kinds of things that you can play. But just get started. Start writing a list of songs. Uh, and grow it. Maybe there's 2 songs right now that you can play on solo guitar. Maybe there's 3. Start with those, play them, try playing them in maybe a different key or a different rhythm or different groove to experiment with, how you might do it a little differently from night to night. Try to find a sweet spot so that when you decide, okay, I'm going to play whatever the tune is right now, you have a starting point. You know what key it's in, you know what the groove is, you know how to play the melody. This is really a vast subject, and I want to say more, but it's also a really personal subject. Uh, you don't have to know a million songs. You just have to know probably a dozen, I think, to play a solo gig. You can always repeat a song later if you need to. You can always play a blues. You can always play, uh, something out of time, something in time, something high up, something low down, something grooving. Think about the different uh, environments that you could create in addition to actual melodies. Just think about different kinds of feelings and musical environments that you could create on the guitar, and listen to other solo guitar players and see what they do. Take what works for you, leave behind whatever doesn't work for you, but just start. The sooner you get started playing solo guitar, the sooner you'll have a repertoire, you'll have an idea of where you're going. Just don't overthink it. If you can play guitar and you're friendly enough to charm one of these restaurants or hotels into, letting you have a regular thing, that would be the most valuable thing you could do. Go somewhere where you can play every week on a Monday or Tuesday or Saturday or whatever you want to do. uh do that 50 times a year and then do it again and do it again, and man, your solo playing will become a thing of its own, and people will be asking you for your tips and tricks and advice. Really, I would encourage you, Paul, to just get out there and do it, and uh, fake it till you make it, really, honestly. Okay, I'm gonna stop there. I really appreciate everyone tuning in. I didn't announce this ahead of time. I just had some downtime between private students, and I thought I would hop on and say hello. Thanks, everybody. Really appreciate you. If you're not already subscribed to my YouTube channel, I hope you will. If you want to check out some other stuff I'm doing, I'm on Patreon, and you can find me over there. Thanks so much. Have a great day. Take good care.